I see I'm playing 1486. Okay. I'm not going to berserk because that Simul took a lot of energy out of me. This will be kind of more instructive, so I'll try and talk through my ideas. E3 is usually a signal that he either wants to play a collie or a stonewall. Let's try and be as aggressive as possible. So C5 aims to put the pressure. It also keeps my options open. I have a lot of different ways of developing here. I could play immediate G6. I could take on D4. I think with C4 I can take, and if he takes back with pawn, I play D5. And I'm guaranteeing a position where he'll have an isolated pawn. I should note that we have actually transposed into a Caro-Kann line. This is actually the Panov attack. And a pretty common signature of this line is usually white will get an isolated pawn. And there's, I think, a few ways of playing for black. Black can play knight c6 or immediately e6. I'm going to play positional e6. And yeah, we'll try and beat this guy with just like pure positional chess. Let's develop bishop e7. And usually the argument is that white will have more space, but black will have a better pawn structure. Let's castle. Let me shamelessly advertise my stream in the chat. I'm streaming my games if anyone is interested. There we go. Make sure it looks okay. Looks decent. 95. 95 is, I don't think I've actually seen this idea so early. Like, usually white will play bishop d3, castle, and then go for 95. So I'm wondering if there's a way to punish white immediately. And probably the best approach is to finish development. Something like knight c6. This can be played without too much calculation. And then I'm basically just putting the ball in white's court, of challenging whether he wants to leave his knight on e5 or if he wants to take on c6. If he takes on c6, I would just take back and have better center. And that's the sound of tea. I'll be right back. Okay, bishop to e7 is actually one move I was looking forward to. I'm actually not sure if he had anything better, but maybe knight takes e6 would be interesting. There's some interesting calculations there. Anyway, I'm relatively pleased with this position because he has the isolated pawn. I have a very solid blockade. Next step will be just developing my bishop and not running into any stupid tactics. B6, I think should work without too many problems. If he takes on d5, I take back with knight. And the key is I don't want a pawn, a black pawn to land on d5. I want to keep either a knight or if he trades, I want my queen to land on d5. So I think b6 is very solid. And then I just want to play bishop e7 next. Okay, bishop b5. Bishop b7. It's actually very strange. Like, he hasn't castled at all. And sometimes when that happens, there will be tactics to exploit the king in the center. And what I'm realizing here, if he castles immediately, there's a few different tactical options for black. One of which is knight f4, which I could play here. I think knight f4 is just winning. Like knight f4, I win g2. There's also knight takes c3 and queen d5, but knight f4 seems very direct. And welcome, Apex Envy. Thanks for commenting in the Twitch chat. I know there's not too many viewers, but I think I grabbed some by shamelessly advertising in the tournament chats. So now I have a very pleasant option. I can take on g2. I can take on d4. Taking on g2 comes with check. I think both of these moves should just be very strong. I'm kind of leaning towards taking on d4, because then he's in a difficult situation, and it's not entirely clear what he should defend. And if I took on g2 immediately, it would be very clear he would just move his king, and I would have to think again. But taking on d4, I think, keeps the pressure and keeps a situation where he could make more mistakes. And there's a lot of things hanging here. g2 pawn still hanging, knight on e5 is hanging. If he moves his knight, for example, knight back to f3, then his queen is lost after something like knight d3. Just draw arrows to demonstrate. Knight d3 would come with check, and then I would take the queen. Apex Envy. Just started playing chess, and I'm having a lot of trouble playing early game. So playing the opening of the game, I think you mean. Do you have a set of openings you just kind of memorize? Personally, there are hundreds upon hundreds of variations that I've memorized, but this has taken years and years to kind of develop. And the opening it's kind of a different part of chess, because a lot of it has to do with memory, but it's also about kind of understanding which types of structures that you want to go into. I think if you're just starting out, you want to maybe pick a few openings to kind of gain experience with. And it takes a lot of time and patience, and also persistence, where if you're struggling with one opening, what you should do is identify where you're having trouble. Like if you play a game, you lose the game quickly, you want to go back, find the improvement, or find what you could do better next time, and then keep the same opening. Now there are kind of a set of openings which I find easier to play. I was about to play e4 there, but I'm going to demonstrate this with d4. One opening that I highly recommend, if you're just starting out, you want something simple, is the London with bishop f4. And if you have no clue about like specific lines or what to memorize, the one thing you should know is the setup. e3, knight f3, bishop goes to d3, castle. It's one of the most basic setups you can play. And then depending what black does, like c3 or c4, and then this knight can develop like this. And I would say most games, if you're playing at maybe a beginning level, this will get you by. It'll give you a very playable position going into the middle game. So that's what I'll do. And the London is one of the few openings which a lot of beginners like to play, but it's still very, very, very popular among GM level. I've studied it at a very high level, so there's certain details and nuances to know. But yeah, Apex Envy, I hope that that gives you some guidance. And sometimes it varies player to player. I mean, some players can get by with playing any opening, and then they just focus on the middle game strategy and tactics. But one thing I will say is probably at least 90% to 99% of chess games are not determined in opening. So it's not necessarily the most important area of the game that you want to focus on, at least starting out. Okay, he plays d5. I'm just going to continue developing. I'm actually a bit curious here. If there's any like sort of immediate tricks. No. There's occasionally, like, if black threw in c5, there's sometimes ideas of bishop take b8, queen a4 check, and then bishop comes to b5. I've had a game like that once, but it requires black to play c5. Bishop b4 is interesting. It's allowing queen a4 check, which would force knight to c6. I'm not sure how strong it is for white, but I'm going to have to calculate here. So queen a4 check, knight c6 is forced, and then knight e5, next logical move. He has to defend the knight. Can't play queen d7, can't really play queen d6 either. I'm taking time here because if queen a4, knight c6, knight e5 is winning, then I just want to be sure of it. He could play knight e4. I have a feeling I'm gonna win material at the end of the line. So, okay, we'll see what he does. And sometimes, what's more important than kind of building up like your memorized opening lines is actually building up pattern recognition, which is different because you're not memorizing like specific moves and specific positions, but you're kind of familiarizing yourself with different patterns. And that moment with like bishop b4, I mean, this is such a typical pattern in queen pawn openings where queen a4 check can be somewhat deadly. So I think he's suffering here. I'm actually curious though. Like he could castle, and if I take on c6, he has queen d7. Now my one hope is he's not watching the stream, and then and hopefully he won't find that. But castling might actually be a fine move for black. Yeah, and if anyone else is watching the stream and you guys have questions, I mean, these games are slow-paced enough where I can answer and play. This guy actually might be watching the stream, because castling is not the easiest move to find. But now I'm actually realizing it might be more complicated. So knight takes c6, queen d7, c take d5. Knight take d5, bishop b5, a6. Okay, worst case scenario, I don't win anything, and I just have equal material position with two bishops. So, okay, we'll see what happens. Queen d7, good find. I mean, backup plan is just like queen c2. Or even like bishop e2. But okay, let's analyze. C take d5, knight take d5. Bishop b5. And he has knight takes c3, so. Okay, so I guess the question is, do I want to move the queen or move the bishop? Now there's this line, bishop e2, bishop takes c6, queen c2, and then he takes on c4. And like he could just get away with winning a pawn. And if I play queen c2 immediately, takes on c6. Okay, I think I'm going to play bishop e5. Because if bishop to e5, if he takes on c6 with the queen, we trade queens, should be positional enough where I'll have some advantage. If he takes with the bishop, queen c2, and like the one concern, I wanted the g pawn covered, but I also want this line if he takes, and his bishop could take on g2. I would have rook g1, and there's some pressure on the g file. I'm going to play bishop g5, or bishop to e5. I might be completely overthinking this, but okay. I mean, it is a line where, yeah, if he does get too greedy, actually there's a funny line. If he takes on c4, I take on c4. He takes on g2. I play rook g1. He plays bishop e4. I could take on e4. He takes on e4. I would play rook take g7, king h8, and then like rook... Oh, rook g6 isn't mate. But rook take f7, king g8, rook... then I take the queen. And I'm up. I think I'm up at least a pawn. I will admit that sometimes this is like one of the biggest weaknesses of stronger players is they overcalculate and they take too much time. This happens with like some of the strongest players in the world. And of course he doesn't go into any of those lines. Let's take on d5. Move quickly. Apex Envy. I find that if I get paranoid, if I don't castle as soon as possible, I end up castling too early and get put in that position. Is that a common mistake? I'm gonna have to reread that. If I don't castle as soon as possible. I mean, usually it's not a mistake to castle too early. I mean, it might depend on the specific position. Usually what I've seen is people make the mistake of not castling early enough, and that's when they get into trouble. For example, the last game I played, my opponent just left his king in the center, and then there were all these tactics I could use to exploit it. So it really depends. But usually you can't go wrong with castling too early. But this is another aspect of chess. It's hard to generalize. There are certain rules we can take, kind of certain principles we can follow, but at the end of the day, it usually comes down to the unique position, and every position is different. So unfortunately, I can't give a necessarily clear answer, but I think I did answer the question that castling too early is usually not a common mistake. Okay, let's play f3. F3 has some positional goals, restricting the knight, also maybe future plans of playing e4, just play some quick improving moves. I have a cool idea here. I would love it if my queen was the one leading the battery on the h file, or on the b1 h7 diagonal, because I would have some mating possibilities. And I wanted to play queen f2, bishop b1, and then queen back to c2, but he's kind of being annoying. So here I'm debating between bishop f5 and bishop e2. Let's play bishop f5. Second guessing myself. Just trying to figure out if his bishop is better than my bishop, or vice versa. Okay, we're playing bishop e2. The reason for that is because usually if you have the bishop pair, you don't want to trade off a pair of bishops, especially if it's not clear. And the eventual plan is to play bishop d1, bishop c2, and get the bishop back to the good diagonal. I still have ideas of e4 as well. So usually when it's my opponent's time and I don't know what to think about, I'll just like kind of look at what my resources are. E4 was a resource. G4, H4, these might not be like the best ideas, but they are certainly worth considering. Bishop D1, bishop C2. And doing this sort of analysis will give me a better idea of what to look for and what my possibilities are. Also have some cool idea like king h1, rook g1, and start pushing the g-pawn. Let's start with bishop to d1. And really the plan is just to improve, especially if he's not doing anything immediate. Let's not let him take. And of course, this is a very standard idea of pushing the queenside pawns. I think it's time to play e4. Comes with a threat. He can't ignore it because I do want to take on d5. And if he takes on e4, I take back. And makes life a bit more comfortable, and then my bishop can develop to f3. So if he wants to keep the position closed, he would probably have to move the queen. But I think e4 was a good move to at least make him think. Try and figure out what the options are for black. If he plays queen f6, I think I just play queen d2 and then go for some e5 idea. At some point, I want to move my queen off c2. Because really the bishop belongs on c2. Okay, let's take. I could play e5, I could play d5, but probably just going to have to use intuition here. Let's play bishop f3. Just not make any commitments just yet. And I think I'm threatening. I thought I was threatening e5, but he has knight d5. Okay, let's do this. Just gonna play quick, try and get back level time. I completely forgot he could take on d5. And we get some queen versus two rooks ending. If he takes on d5, well, he can't take on d5 with a knight because pawn take, and then, for example, take, we trade on e1. At the very end, I have king f2, and then his rook and his bishop would be hanging. So if he wants to go for this line, he could take with the bishop, take, 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 king f2. And he has 2 rooks and a pawn for a queen, which is normally... It would normally be just up material for black, but I think the 2 bishops are just so powerful, and I would have the pass d pawn. So it would be an interesting line. I just want to reinforce everything. Let's play queen f2. I'm keeping the rook on e1 defended. And sometimes positions like this, you don't want to like try and kill them immediately. You just want to keep things solid and just slowly but surely improve. Also, like poke around at them too. Like my next move is going to be a poking move, like queen g3. Just see how he meets threats of bishop take h6. And now I have a pleasant time advantage. So I think the game is at least steering in my favor. Queen a3, slightly annoying. Like queen d4. Let's play queen d4, controlling the center. If he takes on a2, I could try and trap his queen. I also have bishop take h6, which looks decent. So I don't think there's too much to talk about here. It's just he's either losing on time or just getting a very bad position. Already a very bad position. Wants to flag, I guess. Okay. Real quick, let's try and figure out where he went wrong. I thought bishop b4 was a mistake, but I guess this line allows black to survive with queen d7. But I think it still offered a pleasant middle game for me because of the 2 bishops, and because I had more potential to just take over the center with this f3 e4 idea. But c4 was kind of annoying. I think I kind of underestimated this move. I should probably play queen f2 first, so then if he plays c4, I could drop the bishop either back to b1 or back to c2. Just keep it on a good diagonal. Anyway, got to this position. Yeah, I think it was just kind of a slow grind after this. Felt like I was in pretty good control. I think this line would have been really interesting if he takes. Let me open up the analysis board. If he takes here, I take. He takes, take here. I just saw the computer evaluation. It's giving a big plus for whites, but I don't know if I necessarily trust that. Maybe it makes sense, like his rooks can't really penetrate, and the d pawn could be really annoying. Well, still would have been interesting. Anyway, yeah, I think that was a smooth game. Hopefully, whoever was watching picked up some stuff. I see someone's commenting on the chat. Ghetto Superstar. I don't know what Mick Loping is saying. I'll try and take that as a compliment. Okay. How long is this tournament? Hour and 46 minutes. I'm gonna take a break and stop the stream. I hope for those who are watching, I think there's 5 people, 4 who are not me. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Um, Feel free to follow me on Twitch or Lichess if you want to see more, and I will be back at some point in the future. Bye.